This is the Athletic Football Show.
Welcome to the Athletic Football Show. I'm Robert Mays. Joining me tonight, it's my good friend Nate Tice. Nate, how you doing, buddy?
Doing very well. That was like a nice, tidy Thursday night offering. It just really felt, it was very succinct.
10:20 p.m.
It was just, that was cruising. Whenever I saw the message on Slack for you about 8:08, and I was like, that's a nice feeling. They're taking the knee and we don't have anything to worry about. It was good. It was an interesting Thursday night. There's some fun, there's some takeaways, but it's not like I don't know how to like package this. There's a lot to take away, but there's not a lot to take away.
I think there are two big conversations to be had. One, obviously, we'll get to the Jags and the fact that they're trending toward making the playoffs. I think the offense was still really fun tonight. Stephen Ruiz earlier today was talking about rewatching the Jaguars game against the Dallas and the drive where they did all the end arounds, and he called it a whimsical ass drive. And that's how I feel about the Jags offense. They're like a whimsical ass offense, and it makes me happy. So we'll talk about some of that stuff and another kind of fun game from Trevor, from Doug Peterson. Not a ton of points, but I still like some of the stuff that they did. But we have to start with Zach Wilson. I think this is it, man. I think that's probably the end of the Zach Wilson era with the New York Jets, when you get benched for a practice squad quarterback who is coming in and running a
single wing.
Let's say fake offense, coming in running a fake offense and moving the ball significantly better than you were all season. It seems like this is it. And, we can talk about what we've learned from the Zach Wilson era. We can talk about where this goes. I think there's a lot to chew on here. So as you're kind of sitting in that understanding and that feeling that this was it for Zach Wilson, what were you thinking about
it? I mean, right off the bat, it was when he came back to start last Sunday, or 4 days ago, it was like, okay, he's been able to take a breather. He's out of the spotlight a little bit. Okay, maybe he's repackaged himself, because I think a lot of his woes have come from it being too fast for him. So maybe, hey, he doubled down, he narrowed down his playbook and knows what's good for him and how to progress through the stuff that he wants to get through. And then watching him on Sunday, I was like, okay, all right, there hasn't been much improvement. So right off the bat, as I saw kind of Sunday's game tail into this game, it was like, oh boy, this is a bow on what's going on here. And what the thing is too, because he's so highly picked, because the rest of the team is ready to go, it's kind of like, okay, this is it. Like, you can't keep him as a backup. So now you're looking for trade fodder. And then now you're looking at the Rosens of the world. You're looking at that, but that was Rosen after 1 year. Like, this is after 2 years. Like, these are quick, get him out of here kind of movements. And the fact that when we've seen Mike White and we've seen, run around quarterback from he's a coyote. He was a former Gopher, but I think he's a coyote. But we see him running around and everything just picking up and actually doing something and moving the ball. It's like, hey, there actually is some pieces here. That's always been the frustrating thing, is we know some of these guys around him, offensive line and receiver talent, is solid or good. But in fact, like Garrett Wilson and stuff, and watching him kind of flounder, and it's just watching it again, you almost felt bad for him by the end. It wasn't like, oh man, look at this, but it was like, man, he could barely even operate the offense. It felt like every third down was like, hold on to your hat. Even like Kirk Herbstreit and Al Michaels were kind of going, and we got another third down. And it was like that kind of like, whenever you get that feeling with a quarterback, it's like, man, he's got to get to new greener pastures or something.
If he gets traded, he's a $3.8 million base salary next year, 5.4 in 2024. There'll be no guaranteed money left on his deal. I think that base salary might be guaranteed. So I don't know how much a team would be willing to give up if they couldn't just move on from him after next season. I would assume that some team will want him just on the off chance they can do something with him. He was the second overall pick in the draft, but the trade, what they can get for him and all that, I don't think that really matters. I think that's way down the list of concerns or considerations.
Yeah.
I went back today and watching that game in the second half when there really wasn't much to pay attention to. And I listened to the Zach Wilson portion of our 2021 pre-draft podcast, because I wanted to, it's been a discussion point tonight on the internets about, is this revisionist history with Zach Wilson? With everyone saying we should have known from Zach Wilson's tape at BYU that some of this stuff might be possible. And I remember being so impressed with some of the off-schedule, not even playmaking, but just some of the throws. Some of those like one-footed, outside the pocket, launch the ball off platform throws. The arm talent, you think back to that throw during his pro day, it's impressive. He can do some of that stuff, and it looks pretty. It's cool. But the thing I just couldn't get out of my head watching him at BYU, and we talked about it on the show, the only game that season, his final season at BYU, that you even saw him have to deal with a little bit of traffic in the pocket was when they played Coastal Carolina. Other than that, he was working in these massive pockets with no one around him ever. It was hard. And I went back and probably watched 4 or 5 games from his at BYU that year, and you couldn't find half a dozen examples outside of that Coastal Carolina game of him having to navigate not even pressure, but just someone around him. Yeah. And that aspect to the pre-draft qualification process, to the scouting process, not having that information was worrying to me. It's like, I don't know what he's going to look like when he has to deal with even a little bit of pressure in the NFL, which he's going to have to. It was just such a huge step from what the circumstances were at BYU, the talent he was playing with up front, even the receivers that he had. Those guys were ball winners. They went out and made 50-50 plays. It was just such a huge jump that I was concerned about what it would look like. That timing, feel, ability to navigate crowded, muddy spaces that you're going to have to do in the NFL, we had no information on it. And the information that we finally got, the answer that we finally got, he can't do it. Yeah. It's just the aspect to his game where he has zero feel for how to navigate that space. Justin Fields holds onto the ball a little bit too often. Justin Fields can make plays moving around in the pocket. Zach Wilson's just tendency to, every single time there's somebody flashing into his face, to bail 15 yards deep and try to roll out and chuck something down the sideline. It's just not a sustainable or viable way to play quarterback in the NFL. And it's all he is. 2.5 seasons, 20 plus starts into his career. It's not getting any better. And I think that's what's brought us to this point.
Yeah, it was a late rising quarterback out of nowhere in a COVID year, like when it was just crazy year and how schedules were going and competition and who was sitting out for the year. And he's just dominating, just, not the greatest schools, not the greatest competition. Like when you had to go through, and that's the thing is, yes, there's always going to be a pedigree with the big school guys, but you watch a Clemson or an Ohio State with Fields or Trevor Lawrence, and you're watching them, they're going against, some damn good competition week in, week out. You're watching Zach Wilson. It's like, well, you only can watch his last year, and it has to be the COVID year, and it has to be when they're playing this school.
Troy.
Maybe
Troy had the best front. He played against that year outside of Coastal Carolina.
Coastal Carolina was a good school, but it's Coastal Carolina. I mean, Coastal Carolina compared to Clemson or something.
Houston. They played Houston that year.
They did play Houston.
That's
and
the
he
team
didn't
I was thinking about.
Houston.
Yeah.
He had a couple flash throws. And so you always had that, and watching them in that offense, I totally agree. And I always had reservations with him. I felt like I was getting gaslit a little bit when people were just like, yeah, he's the easy number 2 over Fields. Man, I even like him better than Trevor Lawrence. And this is where I've become a caricature myself, always talking about process with guys. That was the big thing with watching Zach Wilson was BYU with their talent advantage. They're only running 3, 4, 5 concepts and just dominate. And I always talk about these. We have better players than you concepts. 989, Y cross, just where they could go and win. And he just had to put it into the realm. Just throw a grenade. He didn't have to throw a javelin and nail it, or a bow and arrow and just nail the throw. So that happened just over and over. Yes, you grade to the flash with quarterbacks. Like, yes, they can do that throw, but the down to down process has to be good. And he was the perfect example of that. I saw the comparisons to Rodgers, to Mahomes. And that's what's always going to happen when you watch a Mahomes and Rodgers, apparently too, is that they do a lot from the pocket. Then they do the flash stuff off. You have to do both. And that's the thing, is when you're grading only to the flash stuff, it's like, well, the flash stuff is when you're better than everybody else at the NFL, which doesn't happen very often. So what can you do when you guys are all equal? And that's why I was always so worrisome with them. Then that's the thing. I still had like a middle, late first round grade on him. I wasn't like, oh yeah, he's a 3rd round or 4th rounder. I won't say I was like that. I still had that grade because yes, they had the flashes, but that's the thing. He was a little smaller too. When you're a good athlete, size matters at this position. Guys under 210, it's not a great history for quarterbacks under 210. That was my biggest knock on Ritter coming in this draft too, is because we're an athlete and being big like Fields or Trevor Lawrence and being that size, at that athletic ability, that adds up. So it's just, there's a lot of more warning flags with him that I think people realize because they just saw the flashy throws and didn't see the process and the efficiency and sustainability that you have to play quarterback in the NFL.
So now we'll see what happens with his future, obviously, where he goes and who wants to take a chance on him. But it brings us to what the Jets are going to have to do at quarterback. And we've talked about this a little bit and what their options might be. They're going to be picking in the middle of the draft. And when they're 7 and 8 right now, they're be picking somewhere between. I'm actually curious what their pick is right now, but they're not going to be picking in a range where they're going to be able to draft somebody.
You got right now is a bookmark, don't you?
I should at this point. So right now, as it currently stands, the Jets have the 15th pick in the first round at being 7 and 8. Okay, so they're probably not going to be in range to get one of the top guys that you'd want to bank on starting early. Yeah. This group of potentially available veteran quarterbacks, I think, is better than some of the groups that we've seen over the last few years, if it includes Carr. So if it includes Derek Carr and Jimmy Garoppolo, that's the type of quarterback that this team should go after based on what's an option and based on where they are in their team building process.
Exactly.
This team with Jimmy Garoppolo, and you would hope a better offensive line. I think that's the other takeaway from their personnel on offense from this game. They're just so banged up. And so, I mean, you get AVP back, and
it's like boom. Yeah, it's a huge bump.
So hopefully the offensive line healthier next year is just a better group. But if you drop a Jimmy Garoppolo type quarterback onto a team with an improved offensive line from what we've seen from them for the past 8 weeks since everybody went down, and this receiving talent with the defense, and these are all. Who knows how good the defense is going to be next year. Okay. They might take a step back. Defense isn't as sustainable, but they have a lot of talent on that side of the ball. The core of roster talent they have and all the young pieces that they have. I think that going out and getting somebody that can help them and be a stabilizing force for them at quarterback right now, I think that is the move. And I think the Jimmy Garoppolo thing makes total sense. There's familiarity with the system. There's so many aspects to it that I think the overall fit for what he can be for them makes sense to me. And then the other guy is Carr. Like what Derek Carr is compared to what they've gotten at quarterback with Zach Wilson. Even if you're not that high on Derek Carr, it makes a world of difference.
Mike White seems so much better. Derek Carr is way better than Mike White. So it's just comparisons for these guys.
Yeah, and that type of guy is probably what you need right now, and they can win with that type of guy. It's not ideal. The ideal thing is you're going through what the Jags are going through right now. You pick the quarterback with a top 2 pick in the draft, and he looks like he's an ascending superstar.
It's the best.
When that doesn't happen, you're left with only bad options.
Yep.
And that's what this is. So finding a guy who's a stopgap, they can afford one. We would make a couple moves right now. I think they have $15 million in cap space as it currently sits. If they move on from Corey Davis, which I think makes sense. He has an $11 million cap hit. They can save $10.5 million if they do that. A couple other moves. Quentin Williams is 9.5 against the cap next year. Give him an extension. Get that number down a little bit. There are ways that they can free up a decent amount of money to go get a quarterback if they need to. With the Corey Davis move, they're sitting there looking at $27 million in cap space.
Easily workable.
So let's say you give Jimmy 2 years, 50.
Yep.
Yeah, a contract like that. Right. That contract doesn't really exist in the NFL right now, and that's why I'm interested in what the market will look like. Those middle range starting quarterback contracts
got to get reset a little bit.
They don't really exist.
Yeah.
You go from guys at the top, in that $30 million average range, that Tannehill's extension, the Jared Goff extension, the Carson Wentz extension, and then you go right down to like $9 million. Which that's, your Jameses and Marcus Mariotas and guys that are backups. So I'll be curious what a guy like Jimmy would get and a guy like Carr, if he does get released, would ultimately get. But I think that's the range they should be shopping in. And then you see what kind of team you are. You see where you can go with that sort of construction. I just think that's the most reasonable and probably the savviest route that they can take here in the next calendar year.
I mean, that's it. But that's what all those compliments you gave to the defense and the O-line, yes, will get better just through health. They still have Tomlinson, like they still have some guys. But I think just that defense, what's nice is as opposed to what some defenses have been microwaved over the past year or so, a few years or so, when you see these defenses make the jump, they have young stars.
Their best players are homegrown guys on rookie
correct.
contracts. Well,
So
soon
that
Williams will get extended soon, but that having Sauce and Quinn
on
Williams,
year two tomorrow, next year is Sauce. So like
they did get microwaved a little bit. I mean, DJ Reed has been good for them. Jordan Whitehead is a free agent. Carl Lawson is a free agent. They've got a decent amount of guys that they paid in free agency, but combining that with these homegrown young players that are still cheap, I think is pretty important.
Exactly. So I think that's what helps a little bit with the defense. The baseline should stay up there. I mean, Quinn Williams, you just look at him. Look at the difference between this defense on Sunday. Then all of a sudden he goes in here the first couple drives. It's like, oh, geez. He's just a monster. And
let's just say you're the 10th best defense in the league next year. Okay. You're 10th to 12th, even if you're a little bit worse than you were this season. And your offense can be average. Okay. That brings you to being competitive. And the defense is going to ebb and flow. Maybe it is still really good next season. Maybe you have a Niners type run where you're sitting there as a top 10, firmly a top 10 defense year in and year out. Even if it's not as stable, we've still seen some teams that have had sustained success on that side of the ball. So I still feel like there is a route for them in 2023 where they're a real competitive playoff type team with marginal quarterback play.
It's kind of funny. It's like they kind of feel how they felt going into this year, but actually might have a better answer. A quarterback, you actually would almost feel better about them. Maybe it's sometimes easier to know. We talk about this, but sometimes easier with your franchise building to know your path. Now it's like, is that going to be good enough? So what happens? Like now it's like, okay, we're not pitter pattering around this. Let's just go. Okay. We got to acquire a quarterback somehow. And I think just makes everything else fall in line. Like you said, with just even something like, well, if not, it's like, what do we do with Corey Davis? Now we know, okay, we can axe that contract. We can move on to the next step. I think just sometimes having clarity in your next steps helps. And again, but this just always goes back to, you can nail so many picks, you can nail so many free agent signings, and you miss on the quarterback pick, and it just doesn't matter.
Well, so I guess that brings me to my next question is that, does missing on this pick make you think of the Joe Douglas regime with the Jets any differently? Or is this kind of this happens, guys miss on this position and now it's your job to pick up the pieces?
He's been getting on base all day, and then the ninth inning he strikes out. Like that's how I kind of feel like, he's done enough good stuff, and I understand why a lot of things he does do that works. But it's just with the Zach Wilson one, it's just like that's the one strikeout you're going to remember, the one that came in the ninth inning with the bases loaded, because that's the one that mattered the most, and that's what kind of stinks. It's like, but that's how kind of being a GM is. Luckily, I think he's done enough where it's not like off with his head. It's more just like, hey, but give him a chance to figure this out. But that's the thing, is usually you got to hit. If you hit, it makes your whole life easier. It's so much easier, and it lets everything else kind of come into place. But I think that's what it is. It's like, I still think he's done enough and nailed enough picks that, it's just that he missed on the big one.
I mean, if this team gets, again, average quarterback play, and depending on what you think of Jimmy Garoppolo and Derek Carr and what you think of, also, I think that we should have a conversation this offseason where we go back and study it, because how good is the Jets? How good are the Jets schematically? Like if you're trying to extricate it from quarterback play, how good of a spot is the Jets offensive coaching staff putting its quarterback? It's hard for me to answer that because of how bad Zach Wilson has been.
And you don't get to see a drop back game, which is where you see a lot of fingerprints of a coordinator and stuff. So the only glimpses you see is he's really creative. Mike LaFleur is really creative in the red zone, which is okay. That's one good sign. And then some third down stuff, they do try to design some stuff. This is just me trying to see the glimpses of how good they are. I think they're more than fine. But it's just that's exactly it. You only see bootlegs, you only see screens, you only see play action. You don't see the drop back stuff like on third downs and seeing actually how it should be executed. Like the one game where it was clean was the Bucs game last year in 2021. And that's because the Bucs had some injuries and they had some good protection in that game. It was like, okay, I see what you're doing here from both a play calling and from a quarterback perspective. But that was the thing. Pockets were clean that game. Reads were really simple to the outside that game. That's why everything was so calm. But then when you see like a real week-to-week game plan, it's like, oh God, just hold on to your hat.
It's funny for me. I'm not wallowing in the man they missed on Zach Wilson. I go straight to the pragmatic just because I've done this so many times before.
Right. You've already done every step of this. Yeah.
This is such a familiar experience for me. It's not like, oh man, and I'm sure Jets fans feel the same way.
Right.
There's no reason to sit and
Darnold.
ruminate on, yes. And oh man, like I can't believe we missed another quarterback. You did. Now it's time to figure out what the next stage of this is. And it's not like you're capped out. It's not like you've leveraged all of your resources.
Nope.
I still feel like there is some sort of consolation in all of this if you're a Jets fan because of some of the other moves that they've made and the way that they've built this thing.
Like, would you rather be the Jets or the Broncos? Like,
I'm totally with you on that. I think the answer is absolutely the Jets.
Yes, exactly. So it's like, this isn't the worst of not having the quarterback wilderness. This isn't the worst case scenario because you do have a lot of good pieces there.
Yeah. I've dealt with teams that were in much worse circumstances than this after missing out on the quarterback. Go look at what the 2020 Chicago Bears are in terms of roster talent, resources, all of that stuff. You could be much worse off if you're the Jets right now and you're a Jets fan. All right, let's go all the way to the other end of the spectrum here.
It's a happy, fun times.
I said it during the game, and I firmly believe it. One, I just love watching the offense. Yeah. It's not great. It's not one of the most high octane offenses in the league. Their most explosive receiving weapon is Evan Ingram. There are only so many places this offense can go. But the stat that I thought was so telling is that in the second and third quarters combined, his first 12 attempts in those two quarters, when the rain was just pouring down, Trevor was averaging 1.97 air yards per attempt on those first 12 throws. And that's not a judgment of Trevor Lawrence. No. It is a very smart way to call the game when there's a monsoon happening and all you're trying to do is run screens, little slide routes, getting the ball in guys' hands after the catch creation. That's what this team does. I think it's been such a well-crafted and smartly called offense from Doug Peterson over the course of this entire season. And what's most fun to me is that this isn't really what they looked like in Philly. All of the motion and all of the moving pieces. And I'd love to ask Doug if this is a product more of what he thinks his personnel is, or some of the things that he went back and studied and thought, I want to incorporate more of this when I get my second chance. It might be a little column A, a little column B. Yeah. But I'd be curious what the answer to those questions would be.
Dude, that's a great point because he ran like a stick nod concept that I see usually in a Shanahan offense. It's not like Andy Reid runs it, even though they're kind of cousins of each other as far as offensive systems. So that was to me going like, okay, you're picking what you saw. Maybe
or motion completion to ETN today, where Agnew goes on the yo-yo and then he goes in the orb. The linebacker follows him, and it's just a little leak out by ETN for like a big gain. Like that kind of stuff is just, it's different.
It's just greatest hits, like, which I mean, that as a compliment. And it's like a motion offense in basketball. Just everyone's just going side to side and you got to play your bubbles. Like every defender has to play their rules. And honestly, anytime the Jets brought a slot pressure or even peeked inside, because, they're getting run on a little bit, they're sticking with the run. They're hitting some explosive plays, especially to the outside. So the slot guys are peeking inside and then they just hit something to the flat. And there goes Evan Ingram getting north. But going into tonight, and really, like, we did our pick segment at the end of our show, and why I stayed away from betting the Jags was I've just had so many bets ruined in my life where the offensive line has a disadvantage against some gangbusters defensive line. Yeah. And it blows up. And I'm like, what was I thinking? They can't even move the ball. And Doug Peterson's smart. He knows he watches film. He sees
another aspect of why they're getting thrown also short.
Side to side. Get these guys.
His average time to throw in this game was like 2 seconds.
Yeah, like flat, like too flat, not even 2 and change. No, and the first drive, one of the first drives, they ran. Oh no, it was like it was after a couple drives, but they did an RPO to Evan Ingram, went for a big gain, and then tackle trap on third and mediums. Both on third and mediums, they were like just running the ball and getting it out in their hands and not letting this defensive line that has the same 49ers DNA and be banshees and tee off. Now they're going, oh shit, I can't get going on my pass rush. Now I got to go chase this guy down the field. They just wore out the defensive line. It was a great game plan. It was perfect. It was truly nickel and diming, but in a good way. I mean, that's a compliment. I
knew you would love that 3rd and 6 counter so much. Dude, I knew I would hear about that by the end of this show. It was beautiful. It was beautiful.
It was.
So Walker Little pulls on that play.
They looked on it and they're like, yeah, tackle trap. We're getting into this.
Walker Little pulls on that play. They got rid of the ball very quickly. They helped the offensive line out. I thought he played pretty well tonight. And having a guy you drafted in the 2nd round be your swing tackle when your starting left tackle goes down is a really nice breaking case for emergency thing to have.
John Shipley, who covers the Jaguars, and he kind of said there's not going to be much drop off there. He even had tipped it, and like kind of was like, "Hey, it's not going to be as drastic as a drop off. It might even be an improvement in some ways." So
he went out we said this on Sunday after the game. I said when he came in, they actually could still function on offense, and that's a huge thing because when you lose your left tackle at this stage of the proceedings, when you're going to most likely be a playoff team, that could be huge. But him coming in and being able to stabilize that is a really important factor for them. So yeah, I love watching them. I just love watching all the ideas and how easy they try to make it on the players. Good for Doug Peterson. I think that him kind of getting this second chance and really running with it has been fun to watch. Strange ending for him in Philadelphia, obviously, with the quarterback stuff and kind of how all of that devolved. So seeing him thrive in this second opportunity is very cool. And then Trevor's just good, man.
Yeah.
Today was just one of those games where he's doing what's asked of him within the offense. They're not asking a ton from him with a lot of those, quick screens, whatever throws. But then when they're asking him to do stuff, second drive of the game, I think, ran a little sail concept to Dan Arnold. That was a beautiful hole shot throw. You tweeted out the throw in the second half, just a deep out, like on a laser beam to Say Jones on third down. And he can do that stuff. And then the other aspect of the game that he has really, really shown a ton of over the last couple of weeks. And I think it changes the conversation about his ceiling. The movement skills are remarkable for a guy that big. His ability to make guys miss in the pocket, to pick up a first down with his legs. That's what takes you from a guy who can run an offense well and be an efficient NFL quarterback to somebody who can be a star within the current makeup of the sport. Because if you can make your offense right when the defense is supposed to make you wrong, it changes the dynamic of the game. And that's what he's able to do on top of all of the within the pocket traditional quarterback stuff that we've come to expect from him. And that is some eyebrow raising shit, man. That changes the game.
That's why I'm telling you, I know process. And it's nothing new, by the way. It's nothing like where it's with him going like, wow, he's finally progressing from the pocket. That's what he was so awesome at Clemson and what he's so awesome at in his first year, in his rookie year, and the first half of this year. This is nothing new. It's just, I think how they've dialed it up has made a lot more sense. And now it all just has come together. And also, by the way, sorry, quick rant. There's nothing about his mechanics that has changed. Nothing. That whole little video breakdown they did of his mechanics, nothing has changed. Like they're saying time to throw and everything, the offense changed. It went from like a play action deep shot attack to like quick game left and right, like back and forth, motion, flats and bubbles. That's why it all changed. Sorry, I couldn't believe that I saw that graphic. But watching this offense, and it's a nice balance. And I already see some detractors of Trevor Lawrence kind of going, well, he's not asked to do anything. With this offense, it's like having a CGI heavy movie, but like with a huge budget and like but with the awesome actors and stuff like that. That is what Trevor Lawrence is. Like he is such again, it's like Dune. Like just awesome CGI, all the smoke and mirrors with it, but just awesome acting. It's well crafted. That's what Trevor does, because just like those third down throws, the back shoulder Dan Arnold, the Zay Jones one, right before that Dan Arnold back shoulder one, he threw a stick to Evan Ingram, and guarantee you if that gets charted, people will say that's a off target throw, and it's not, because Sauce Gardner was hanging there and he back shoulders him to get him go north so he doesn't throw him into the waiting corner. Like that's what Trevor's doing right now. He can layer those throws where he can go, I'm missing on purpose, where you're missing to make a guy drop step. And that's high-end quarterback play. This is stuff that I got so excited about. That's why I'm just so excited everyone else is seeing this. Jaguars are on prime time. So I'm like, yeah, look at this. Isn't it fun, guys? But no, it's a really well-crafted offense that understands their weaknesses, understands the players really well. The Evan Ingram usage is just exactly Doug Peterson, what he's done so well. No more vertical routes with Evan Ingram. Horizontal, crossing, slide routes, get him running. That is him to a T. And then on top of it, Trevor Lawrence can just, when it's third down, it's not crunch time, he can just do the real shit. So it's a perfect package. I love watching him. It's one of my more favorite watches to watch each week. Last year, it was like me just like watching some terrible schlock movies, like watching The Room. Just
you saw the beauty in it though. You saw the beauty in it before a lot of people did. There was one thing that they did, and Honest NFL on Twitter, if you guys don't follow him, I would encourage that you do. He tweets out some interesting stuff. Was talking about, he has a lot of knowledge of the Eagles and Doug Peterson. was talking about how against real number one corners, that Doug will play with the splits of his receivers, where he'll really tight splits because it gives you inside leverage. And if you want to run some crossing routes away from those guys, it's going to give you an advantage. And they did that against Sauce with Evan Ingram on that big third down where he's coming all the way across the field, which I think is like a fun little detail that makes a ton of sense. Why would I try to wrestle with that guy outside the numbers? Let's make him play in the middle of the field where even if he's still a really good player, that's not him at his best. So just
understanding
little
matchups.
tiny things, little tiny things. And I think this offense has done a lot of that this year. People are gonna be like, well, they only scored 19 points. They didn't go for it on a 4th and inches. They missed a field goal. I also think they played to the game.
That's what it was.
That's kind of how it felt.
Because at first I was like, Doug's usually super aggressive, but I think he says, I'm getting every point possible. It doesn't matter because they're not scoring 10. So let's just get to 12. Let's just get to 13. Let's just keep kicking these field goals.
So now the last thing to kind of talk about with the Jags, this team's probably going to the playoffs, man.
Oh my God. Dude, did you see the Titans injury list too? Like it's just
the Jags were the betting favorites to win the AFC South before this game.
Oh wow, I didn't know that.
Yep.
I mean, it makes sense when you look at
before this game even happened. They were the betting favorites to win the AFC South. Now they are, I think, significant. I don't know how significant, but they're, I think, heavily favored to win the AFC South now, and they should be. Malik Willis is going to be starting the rest of the year for the Titans. The Jags after this game have Houston in Week 17, and then they have the Titans in Week 18. So it's a play-in game, and if they win, that they're in. They are going to be the AFC South winner. And I think that they could give people some problems in the playoffs.
Oh yeah. They could put points on the board.
If the Ravens do not win the AFC South, the Ravens would get the 5th seed, and the Ravens would go to Jacksonville in round 1. We just saw the Jags beat the Ravens.
We did. It was the whole 4th quarter. No, I know that's what's. I think that especially how this defense played. I know they played against Zach Wilson or the corpse of Zach Wilson tonight, but it's just they do enough. Like watching them against the Cowboys, I was like, okay, they could cobble something together and they can adjust really well. I think that sometimes they have some limitations, but it's like at least they can take care of business. But I think just this Jags offense in the playoffs, I mean, it's gonna be a pain in the ass for everybody having to communicate the motions.
They're so annoying. They're so
unique.
Annoying.
Yeah, it's a unique offense.
You say unique, I say annoying, but same thing gets solved.
Silver lining. Yes, exactly. But imagine for a defensive coordinator going into that, going like, oh shoot, okay, who's going to get gamed up this time? Who is going to get motioned back and forth? So who are they going to identify as our weakness? And that becomes into a whole self-scouting thing. So yeah, they can give a lot of teams issues.
The distance, the gap tonight between how Jets fans must have felt watching Trevor Lawrence and how you feel with the crowd chanting for Streveler to come into the game with the guy you drafted 2nd overall going to the bench. You couldn't feel more different as fan bases in this moment if you're a Jets fan or you're a Jags fan. The Jags, even in moments where they were good over the last decade, it's those teams where they are microwaved. The 2017 Jags feel exactly like that, where you spend just this insane amount of money in free agency to rebuild this entire defense. And they're great. They're the best defense in the league and one of the best defenses of the last decade. And they go to the AFC Championship game. They almost go to the Super Bowl, but you can't consistently win that way. It's just never going to happen. So having a quarterback like this and having a potential offensive ecosystem like this, it's just different. It's different as a fan to watch this type of team and understand what the future looks like for this type of team. And I'm happy for Jags fans.
I am too.
That's an amazing moment to be in. This stage of where the Jaguars are is just one of the best parts of being a sports fan. When you kind of feel it start to come on and like, all right, we got the guy. We got the guy, and we have the guy and the play caller, and this pairing makes sense. And you're going to be able to get up every single week to watch this team and think the guy that is playing quarterback for us and the guy that's calling the plays is at least going to give us a shot today. And that is an unbelievable feeling. It is one I have never felt in my entire life. It's starting to come for me, but for Jags fans that have never really gotten that, I mean, who's the best quarterback in Jags history outside of after Mark Brunell? It's probably David Garrard.
David Garrard, and Leftwich for a little minute, but David Garrard.
This is an entirely different thing with what's going on with Trevor Lawrence, and it's fun. And on the Jets side of this, back to a familiar feeling, back to the drawing board yet again.
it just makes the team building aspect so much fun because you're always going to get the best version, especially of the offensive player you sign. You're going to get the best version of them. You're going to get Christian Kirk in the slot with Trevor Lawrence peppering them throws. So whoever you sign, that makes that fun. Whoever you draft, the images of like, imagine this tight end with Trevor Lawrence. Like, it's not, well, imagine this tight end. Well, who's going to throw to him? It just makes being a fit so much better because it gives the whole team confidence. Because even if a defense, say, how many times have we seen this with the Chiefs? I mean, God, countless times they give up a lead or it's a tie game. Well, we got Patrick.
Yeah.
So so it's just a confidence that even if I screwed up that one play, I can be aggressive because I know we might get those points back. It's not like fair for, for other teams and also Patrick Mahomes or guys like that can do that kind of stuff. Or Joe Burrow, another example. Those guys just give confidence to their whole team that they're like, I could be aggressive on defense. I know if I'm running my route, the ball can come to me at the right time because the quarterback's going to be so good. If I'm an offensive lineman, I don't have to be perfect with every block. I'm not George Fant or an offensive lineman going, putting their arms up because I blocked and then the quarterback just ran into the back of me for a sack. Like,
not only do fans feel it, but guys feel it. And I've talked to coaches about this. When you have the guy, it feels different to go to work every day.
Oh yeah.
Everything about your day-to-day and the feeling in the building changes. And guess what? Trevor feels different. When you watch him, just the vibes and just the confidence that he's playing with. He threw that missile shot, that laser on third down, the little celebration and just what his demeanor is like on the sideline. That shit's real. And I think that is starting to affect everybody else. And we'll see how far they can take it this year. They are a deeply imperfect team. In terms of their skill position, talent, what they have going on defense. Still a long way to go for what this Jaguars team is, but hard not to have pretty good feeling, pretty good vibes right now.
But that's why if you nail the quarterback, it makes everything else taste that much sweeter. Doesn't matter if we don't have a, palpable ball winner or, consistent coverage and pass coverage. Like, it doesn't matter. You have the quarterback and you have a pretty damn good play caller and play designer. That's a really nice combo to have.
Last one. Kind of bummed about the Dwayne Smoot thing. Seems like he might be had a non-contact injury and he could be done for the year, which sucks. He was playing so well. Their front was playing much better today against the Jets offensive line, which is comes with 10 grains of salt, but still we'll see what their defense can muster if and when they do make the postseason, because it seems like it's definitely trending in that direction. Yes. All right. That's all we got. It's 40 minutes on one game.
It was great. There's actually a lot to dig into.
Literally the number 2 overall pick, his time as the team starting quarterback came to an end tonight. We probably did an hour on that.
That's why I started. It was like, there's a lot that I want to dig into, but really it's only a couple things, but they got layers.
They're meaty.
Layers.
They were
meaty, very
things.
meaty. Very meaty.
All right. That's all we have for today. If you guys have not, please subscribe to the YouTube channel. Would love that if you could.
Please.
That'd be a nice little Christmas present to us. We are not going to be doing a live recap show on Sunday nights this week on YouTube. It's Christmas, so go enjoy some time with your families. I'm going to be enjoying some time with mine. We're going to have a 2-part audio-only recap of Week 16 that is going to come out on Monday. We're going to do a Saturday show. We're going to do a Sunday show. So that will be in your guys' feeds, hopefully early afternoon on Monday, breaking down all of those games.
I'm getting up early. We're cranking it out. Don't you?
Yeah. You're up at like 3 a.m. anyway. You got a kid, so
oh my god.
Yeah. You don't sleep anymore.
There's some film tweets at like 1:30 in the morning my time. I'm sure some East Coasters waking up to that are like, "What the hell is this?"
They just think you're a weirdo, which you are. So it's totally fine.
It is. Yeah. I have a type.
So that's all we have until Monday. Please enjoy the holidays. If you've been celebrating Hanukkah, which we had latkes last Sunday while I was watching games, it was fantastic. Casey was just frying them up. I mean, fried potatoes good, sour cream good,
exactly,
applesauce good. I'm into
Don't
it.
Overthink it.
If you're celebrating Christmas this weekend, enjoy some time with your family. Please do. We will be back on Monday. Enjoy the weekend, enjoy the holiday, and we'll talk to you soon.